EmuDeck 2 just landed over the weekend and it sports a whole host of new and awesome features. Overall, I'm extremely happy with how this piece of software has landed, and I wanted to use this video to celebrate how awesome deck-specific software can be. EmuDeck can of course be used elsewhere, it can even be used on Windows, and I'll do a tutorial on that soon, but EmuDeck was built specifically for Steam Deck and it's all the more wonderful for it. This video is going to serve as a quick start guide as well as a showcase of all the new features. Of course, there are already other videos out there. I highly recommend the latest videos from Retro Game Core and Nerd Nest. Both are awesome for different reasons. And also, if you're looking for emulator specific tips, I actually recommend going back to my emulation mega guide from a few months ago. But for this video, I'm going to try to keep it short while still showcasing all the things that make EmuDeck amazing. As we get started, folks, don't forget to like and subscribe. I've been working tirelessly to bring you the best Steam Deck content that I can, and your likes and your subs help me out a ton. Alright, let's get into it. So here are a couple tips as you're getting started. I personally recommend playing your retro collection from an SD card. Now, you may have a card dedicated to emulators and ROMs, or you may have one big SD card that you can use for your Steam collection as well as your retro game collection. Either way works. I personally have one dedicated card for retro gaming. I'll include a link to an SD card in the description. If you're unsure about what kind of brand or speed to get, refer to my Steam Deck accessories video for the differences between different SD cards. If this is your first time using this SD card, then make sure to format it while you're in gaming mode, and then you can exit to desktop mode. In my case, I'm using a new Steam Deck, but I'm using an SD card that is already preloaded with my ROM and BIOS files. Once you're in desktop mode, navigation can be a bit tricky. Russ from Retro Game Core recommends a hub to use a keyboard and mouse, and that is great advice. What I'm doing in my case though is I'm using an app called EmuDeck. I downloaded EmuDeck from the Discover Store, and I also downloaded EmuDeck from my Windows desktop. Now I can remote into my Steam Deck from my Windows desktop using this app, and it's really convenient. You can also just use the Steam Deck itself. You can navigate with the trackpads, and most of the time you can pull up the Steam keyboard by holding the Steam button and pressing X. It can be a bit clunky, but it's certainly doable. Finally are the folders. EmuDeck will create the correct folders for you the first time you set it up, but I already have folders created. So on my SD card, there's an emulation folder, and in that emulation folder are 5 subdirectories: BIOS, ROMs, saves, storage, and tools. ROMs is where you're going to put your games, and there are subdirectories in here for each supported console. BIOS is a directory that will house your BIOS files. BIOS files in this case refers to any supporting files needed by the emulator to play your ROMs. These are all copyrighted files, so you'll have to find them yourself. There are helpful tools in EmuDeck now for making sure you have the right files though, but more on that later. Finally, you'll need a browser. If you don't already have one, just click on your Firefox icon in the taskbar and install Firefox. Next, let's download EmuDeck. Downloading EmuDeck is extremely easy. The only thing that could be easier is if it were a flat pack so you can download it from the Discover Store. That said, there are extremely good reasons why it's not a flat pack. More on that in a moment. In the meantime, open Firefox and go to emudeck.com. Click on download and then click the download app button. This is going to download a file called emudeck.desktop to your downloads folder. Go ahead and drag that to your desktop. Alright, so real quick, EmuDeck is not an application in the traditional sense. It's mostly a collection of scripts that is orchestrating the installation and configuration of other applications, namely emulators. Many of these emulators are flat packs. A flat pack has very limited privileges when it comes to installing and configuring other flat packs, since these run in sandboxes. Therefore, EmuDeck itself cannot be a flat pack. The more you know. Anyway, double click EmuDeck on the desktop and a brand new GUI will come up. Before this, EmuDeck was a command line application, but now it has a full-fledged GUI, and a very good one at that. Open it up and let's get ready to run easy mode. For once, I actually don't recommend using easy mode. You can if you want, but custom mode is so easy to use now that I actually recommend just starting with that. That way you can actually choose some of the settings instead of letting EmuDeck choose for you. Still, if you do choose easy mode, here's a quick overview of what it's doing. It's installing about a dozen emulators like Dolphin for GameCube and Wii, DuckStation for PS1, PCSX2 for PS2, as well as RetroArch, which emulates multiple systems. It's also configuring these emulators. These configurations include resolutions, custom borders, custom shaders, and custom controls so that the controls are similar across all emulators. EmuDeck is also adding custom control templates to Steam so that you can select them. Finally, it's installing and configuring EmulationStation. Basically, you have two ways to navigate your emulated game collection. You can choose to add games to Steam, or you can navigate your retro games from a custom front end called EmulationStation. I actually use both. There are systems like NES and Super Nintendo where I have hundreds of games. I choose not to add those to Steam because they would add a lot to my menus. But I have fewer games for more modern systems like PS2 all the way to Switch. For these, I choose to add them to Steam via Steam ROM Manager. Once the EmuDeck install is done, it's going to give you the option to launch Steam ROM Manager. Please note that if you are using the built-in Steam Deck controls to navigate the desktop, that Steam ROM Manager will close Steam, and that's going to limit the controls you have. You'll lose access to the virtual keyboard, and you'll have to use the triggers for left and right click. Alright, from there, you're going to choose what gets added to Steam. Steam ROM Manager is honestly a little tricky, and I could make a whole video on how to wield its power. For now, I want to show you how to use EmulationStation, so just disable all the parsers by clicking the top toggle, then enable the EmulationStation toggle. Once you're ready, click preview at the top to see what sort of art it's going to use to import into Steam. Once you like the art, just click the Save App List button at the bottom. When you see the Done Adding Entries notification at the bottom, you can reopen Steam to see if your app was added. You can launch from here or go back to gaming mode and try it there. By the way, I dragged my back to gaming mode icon from the desktop to the bottom right of the taskbar, and now I have a handy way of getting back to gaming mode no matter which windows I have open in the desktop. The more you know. Anyway, by launching EmulationStation, you can navigate your systems and then your games within those systems. It's pretty neat. Now let's take a look at the custom mode install of EmuDeck. Again, I highly prefer this now because you can actually choose configurations for yourself, and it's really easy to do so. The first choice is what device are you installing onto. Let me know if you want to see an Anbernic Win600 guide. The annoying thing about the Win600 is that it does not have an SD card slot. It would be a lot easier to just transfer my existing setup if it did have that option. Anyway, pick Steam Deck, and the next screen is which emulators to install. By default, MAME and Ryujinx are unselected. You can choose to add those if you want. The next screen allows you to log into Retro Achievements. Retro Achievements is just like it sounds. It's a crowdsourced service for getting achievements in your retro game collection. It's easy to create an account and then log in from there. After that screen, you have the option to change the look and feel of certain systems. The first is whether or not you want bezels for 8-bit and 16-bit systems. I like having the bezels, especially if you choose the authentic aspect ratio, since otherwise you're just going to have black bars. Next is the option to select aspect ratios for classic Sega games, Super NES games, Dreamcast / N64 games, and then finally GameCube. I selected the recommended options for each, but do note that there may be graphical glitches for the systems that use widescreen hacks like Dreamcast, N64, and GameCube. Next up are shaders. You can use the LCD shader for handhelds, the CRT shader for classic 2D systems, and a CRT shader for classic 3D systems like PS1 and N64. The CRT shaders add scanlines, which some people might think feel fake, but depending on the game, I think they actually soften harsh looking low poly environments. Your mileage may vary. Alright, now that that's done, it's time to look at Steam ROM Manager again. So I have a weird recommendation for this. I actually recommend looking at one system at a time in the manager. So if you have everything disabled like I showed you in the previous chapter, then you can now enable, let's say, emulators. This parser is going to add individual emulators to Steam. I still find this handy in case you need to make tweaks to the emulator itself. I give some good examples of why this is helpful in my emulation mega guide video. Next up, select one of your favorite systems that doesn't have too many games. I'll choose PS2. Once you have that enabled, go back to the preview at the top, press Generate App List, and review the art that gets chosen for your games. If you have a really obscure game, it's possible that you'll be missing art. It's also possible for the parser to not provide a specific enough name to the search engine, in which case it'll do something like find box art for Ninja Gaiden 2, even though the game in question is Ninja Gaiden Black on the OG Xbox. Again, I could spend an entire video talking about ways to mitigate these issues, but hopefully for you, you find the art you're looking for pretty easily. You can also upload your own art if you prefer. Once everything looks good, click the Save App List button at the bottom and wait for everything to get saved to Steam. Now you should be able to go to the Steam app or open gaming mode to find your games. You can search for them in the search bar or find the collection. Here's my PS2 collection with my PS2 games. Let's play some Katamari because that game is awesome. While I'm here in Katamari, it's a good time to tell you about the unified controls for most emulators. Where possible, EmuDeck has configured the controls to use a convention called EmulationStation. This means that most of the time you can quit a game by pressing select and start, or you can quick save by pressing select plus R1, then quick load by pressing select plus S1. Where possible, you can fast forward with select plus R2. It's wonderful to have this convention so you can have some consistency. There are emulators that could not be configured in this way, and for those you can choose the appropriate control template from inside Steam. This allows the back grips to serve as some of the emulation controls like quick load and quick save. Finally, let's talk about some of the tools you can use. These are great. So if you open EmuDeck again, you can go to tools and stuff on the bottom right, and you have a number of options. First is power tools. This will install a plugin manager called Decky Loader and a plugin called Power Tools. Now I should note that I have very mixed experiences with both of the two mega popular plugin loaders, Decky Loader and Crankshaft. When they work, they are both awesome, but oftentimes their functionality can get broken by a Steam Deck update. Still, if Power Tools works well for you, it's a good way to manually tweak the CPU so that you can do things like reduce the number of active cores so that there's more headroom for the clock speed to go higher. This is extremely helpful for some emulators like Dolphin, and it's going to help you squeeze out some extra performance. Next up is Gyro DSU. This tool allows you to use the gyro on Steam Deck as a means to control the gyro for the Wii U emulator. Again, extremely helpful for an authentic experience. After that is the EmuDeck compressor. Actually, I haven't used this yet, but it's helpful for compressing games from certain systems and reducing the overall size of your library. Next up is update emulators and tools. I suggest coming in here every so often to make sure your emulators are all up to date. All right, now comes the really good stuff. The next button is the quick settings button, and it's a quick overview of all the graphical configurations that you can adjust, like borders, LCD shaders, CRT shader, and all the aspect ratio options. If you don't like something after trying it, you can just come right here to change it. The next button is check BIOS, and this is absolutely one of my favorite new features. This is going to tell you if you have the right BIOS for PS1, PS2, Switch, Sega CD, Saturn, and Nintendo DS, as well as Dreamcast. As you can see, I'm missing some. This helped me because I actually thought I had the Switch and Sega CD BIOS, so when this told me that they were actually missing, I knew that they were in the wrong place, so I was able to go fix that. You can also look at the blue box on the right side, and that gives you tips for where to place your BIOS. There's even a link for more details. Next is Save Backup, and this tool allows you to back up your entire saves folder to a service like Google Drive, OneDrive, or Box. In the future, this should support save syncing, which would be wonderful. Finally, in this section is Steam ROM Manager. You can always find Steam ROM Manager here in case you want to add new ROMs to Steam. There's also a guides section. I highly recommend reviewing the emulators guides if you have specific questions about an emulator. If you select the emulator, it's going to give you a link to the wiki for any special configuration. It'll show you if the BIOS files are detected. There's a cheat sheet on the right side for emulation shortcuts, and there's a reset configuration button if you want to reset everything for this emulator back to the default. That is sick. The emulation showcase button actually takes you to one of our RGC videos, shout out to Russ. And finally, if you want, you can uninstall EmuDeck in case you want to start over or just get rid of your emulators. Overall, EmuDeck is the easiest tool I've ever used for emulation, and now it's even better than it's ever been. It's easy to install for the first time, and it's easy to update your existing install. It's easy to play games from EmulationStation or from within Steam itself. It's easy to play handheld or dock to a TV. It's now easy to see if you have the right BIOS, it's now easy to back up your saves, and it's now easy to toggle graphical settings on and off. The only thing I consider not so easy is Steam ROM Manager. Hopefully Steam Deck really gives the developers a chance to look at this application again and make it more friendly to use. It's very robust and very powerful as it is, but for a first-time user, it's kind of difficult to troubleshoot certain things like why do I have two different PS3 collections? Mind you, I actually know the answer to this problem and I know how to fix it, but not everyone will, and that's frustrating, I think. EmuDeck has proven that Steam Deck applications can be and are a thing, and EmuDeck has set a new standard for usability of an app on a handheld game console. Hopefully other devs will take note. By the way, if you want tips for optimizing specific systems, you should check out my emulation mega guide where I have tips for how to control 3DS games with the touchpad, how to enable certain hacks for the best performance on F-Zero GX, how to set up pointer control for Wii games, and how to deal with the finicky PS3 emulator RPCS3. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Shout out to my patrons who help make this channel better. Deck Gang out. Goodbye!